Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Junia Doan. Welcome to Uncommon Sense and thank you for joining us today. My guest is Mia Dvornik. Mia is director and curator at the Northwood Gallery and cultural anthropology adjunct professor at Northwood University. So welcome, Mia.
Thank you
Well,
very
two
much.
different roles, but both in a sense in the arts. What does it take to be a director and curator of a gallery? Northwood Gallery.
Well, honestly, Junia, I will never be able to express my gratitude to Northwood and for them having a gallery because it was a salvation. As you know, if a professional woman comes to Midland and she's left without her daily obligations, which were at least 10 hours a day, it can be a very difficult adjustment. So the gallery was there for me, and I was so happy to jump into the shoes of a gallery. First, you know, I've worked as a director of sales while I was finding my way around, learning how the business is done in America, and I was, you know, building my position as a director, combining all the previous experiences I have had, which included history of art, art critique, working as a journalist in the media, and knowing and loving the art. And Midland is such a wonderful community which does understand and treasures art. So it was a very easy and very natural connection, and I cannot tell you how happy I am that I have spent 15 years doing this.
15?
15.
That's a triumph. Goes past like this. But you started in Midland doing other things, did you? How did you come to be here?
It was my husband. It was my husband who was able to who was able to get a job in his field, which is polymer science, with 2 phone call conversations over the ocean and probably a week of work before everything was put in place. My husband and I were both born and raised in Belgrade, what was the former Yugoslavia, and we have been crossing the ocean many times for career and for pleasure, and we actually lived in both worlds, and we enjoyed it tremendously, coming to the States and upgrading ourselves and learning more in our respective fields. But somehow, because of our parents and because of cultural connections and because of the daughter that we wanted to have a full experience of growing up in the family in the true sense of the word, not uprooted, but participating in different cultures. And you know, Yugoslavia was in many sense, in the true sense of the word, polyethnic and polylinguistic and polyreligious country. And we had family members who were educated in France and spoke French, and those who were born in Austro-Hungarian Empire and were, you know, bringing the culture of the Central Europe into the upbringing, and we thought it was important for her to be exposed to all those different aspects. But then things did not turn out well any longer. The country broke up. It was at the time of the demise of the Eastern Bloc, and Yugoslavia was outside of it. It was a free country in many ways. It was what we used to refer to as soft socialism because we could travel. We always had our passports. We could have foreign currency accounts. So we were part of the world. We were not behind an iron curtain. And that's why we opted to live there for most of our lives since our daughter was born. But then it all changed, and the country broke up in a series of civil wars. And although Belgrade and the country around it, Serbia, was not directly the front, it was still, you know, there were things that were going on there that were not something to be a model for a child to grow up in. The society imploded, the value systems were broken down. It was becoming dangerous. As you can see by the amount of words I've already used, I was very vocal about things that were happening in my country, and I was in the position to have access to the media. And
what was your position?
I was a professor at the University of Belgrade. I taught cultural anthropology, and I was also at that time vice president of finance for the School of Philosophy, which was a large institution. It was a school of 7,000 students and 500 plus employees. And it was a very difficult job to do. Can you imagine, we know examples from Argentina and from Germany before the Second World War, inflation that is not measured, that you cannot even express. So when I was negotiating how we were going to do the salaries with my chief accountant, we would use code words. We couldn't pronounce the numbers of the amount of money we needed for salary. So I would say, and how about 265 and 7 groups of 3 zeros?
Oh, gosh.
That was how it was bad. And when you have an inflation that takes away the value of money, there is also another inflation of lives, of culture, of everything. All is depleted, all is devalued, and it is then a prey of very many negative aspects going on in society. And Peter and I were very afraid for our daughter to grow up in that.
What were some of these negative aspects you observed or experienced?
Well, first of all, because I was vocal, I started to be followed, and there were 2 different or many groups of people who were building my reputation outside of myself. One was the official police. We had a student, one history professor and I had a student who really wanted to warn us, and he told us, I am upgrading, and he was working at the Ministry of Interior at that time as a part-time employee, and he said, I'm upgrading your files daily. Whenever you say something, whenever you publish something, it is being added to your files, and they're growing very quickly. So just wanted to tell you, they're not going to worry about you. You don't have access to arms or anything. You're just stalkers. But still, I wanted to warn you so that you know that it's being watched. And the second were all paramilitary formations and all political parties that were everything but civilized democratic political parties that have restored to some violent measures in, how shall we say that, seeking votes. And it could be dangerous. So, there were examples. Again, I was not that important. It would not have happened to me. But there were journalists, like what you read about in Russia and other parts of the world, or this very unfortunate trial that's going on in Iran right now with American journalists. Those were people who were much more in danger, and they were examples of being beaten up, or sometimes even worse than that. So it was not safe. It was not safe in so many ways, and we had fantastic understanding of our parents who told us, "Go, kids, go." They didn't tell us, "Stay with us and take care of us." They were all absolutely wonderful, and we're so grateful to them.
But they didn't want to go.
They couldn't, and you can't do that, because you have to have enormous amounts of money, and you don't have money because everything was confiscated. Everything that was left was devalued, so you have nothing. We had to sell our car, and we sold it to a friend because we were afraid if you sold it on the open market, you never knew who you were dealing with, because there were examples that you sell a car and you go home happy with the money, and then somebody knocks on your door and takes the money away. And of course, you are not going to to object to that, because your life is certainly much more valuable than a fistful of dollars. So we sold it to a friend, and that friend could not pay it all at once, and that was a sign that he was an honest man. So he paid in installments, and as he was paying in installments, Peter was the first one to get the job in Midland at the Michigan Molecular Institute as a research scientist, working on the field that he was working on in Belgrade. So what coincidence was that? He had to come in first, then we sent our daughter when the second installment came, and then I came in last, and it was in January of 1994, many, many years ago. We did not plan to stay in Midland forever, but we're glad we have. We didn't have any plans. When you leave under such circumstances, you're not in charge of your life. You have to stand back and see where the life takes you.
Who made the decision to leave?
We were all thinking about it, but I think it was me who took the first initiative. I had a cousin who lived in Flint at that time, and I wrote to her and asked her if she would be kind enough if we could send our daughter to her, so that she could
Had you
stay
ever seen
for
this cousin?
I've seen her only once.
Afterwards.
No, before.
Before.
They lived in Tennessee at that time, and I managed to go and see them and meet them all for the first time. It was my great uncle's children, two wonderful young women at that time, young, not so anymore. And one of them was still in Tennessee at that time, and the other one was with her husband in Flint, both working in medical profession. And I just asked her, would you take her, because it is beyond being able to control what is going on. I knew I was followed. I was afraid that she would be followed too. Again, I didn't think that anybody would kidnap her or kill her, because we didn't have that kind of money. But you do not want your child to experience a trauma for life.
Did she want to leave?
She was aware that things were not going well, and that we were scared for her, and she was scared for us. You know, I have Peter too. We were constantly, whenever there was a demonstration, pro-democratic, pro-Western, pro-normal life once, we were there. And she was watching, and sometimes the police would interfere, and she was scared for us too. So I think that she was, in a way, relieved to go. By that time, she spoke perfect French, and she was quite fluent in English, because she started learning English from grade 1, and she was in grade 7 at that point. It wasn't easy for her, for sure. She was a very popular girl, and she hated to leave her friends behind. But she also saw that a lot of her friends were leaving, so it wasn't really a big challenging to leave. But I'm sure it must have been a very challenging time for her to adjust.
What did she notice, or what did you notice when you first moved here? What were some of the differences? This is going to sound probably a little bit strange, but she went to an experimental school that was very challenging, and they had serious subjects. She was in 7th grade. She had physics, chemistry, biology, 2 foreign languages in Belgrade,
2 foreign languages, history. I think it was a total of 11 subjects. And then when you get home, you had plenty of homework to do for the following day. And American school, compared to that rigorous German system, in essence, was a little bit, and she's a very smart girl, it was too easy for her. And she was not challenged enough, so we had to find extracurricular to keep her occupied and on track. And sports played a role, and all kinds of activities through school. But maybe there was a little bit of a crisis for a year or two, because she was used to being a star. She was the best student, and then all of a sudden she comes in and she has a trace of an accent, and she is not that star anymore. So she had to work herself up to get to the position that she was used to having, and she did it. She had no problems, really.
Interesting. And what were some of the things you had to adjust to, separate from you lost your whole professional career?
That was the biggest part. It was, I think, very hard for me, because Tiana had to work her way and build her new identity in American school. Peter continued. Probably it was the least dramatic for him, because he kind of picked up where he left off. And I have lost everything. I did not have a job. I did not have my social contacts. I did not have meetings and protests to go to. I didn't have TV stations to go and voice my opinion about how ridiculous some political decisions are concerning education, and all kinds of things that I was concerned with. So I felt to be in a little bit of isolation. And since we came with an idea of staying for a year or two, hoping that the country will recover itself and that we could go back and continue our life there, or at least part of the time, I was on sabbatical. And I was obligated. I felt that it would not be right for me to look for a job, because I gave my word that I will be back at that time. So I had 2 extensions for 2 years. And during that time, I tried to finish up some articles that I was working on. And I have to tell you, it was not easy. It was very difficult to find the real push to survive. And I am pretty sure I had suffered from depression.
Oh.
And I'm also pretty sure that I was pretty horrible, both to my husband and my daughter, as being demanding and, not the way they used to know me. But, 2 years of my life is not really that much. After 2 years, I said, enough. We're not going back. I'm going to resign finally, and then I'm going to start my new life. And how do I start a new life? Let's go and see what's around.
It's so wonderful you speak of depression, but also grief.
Oh, definitely, definitely. That was a big part of our lives, unfortunately, because we lost 3 parents, my husband's mother and father, and my mother, in good health when we left, and in the first 10 years, they had all departed. And we were not there. We were there for funerals, but,
Not the
it
living.
was not the living, and it was really not. And of course, there was no option to bring them over because the health system would not be able to provide for what they had to go through and what they fortunately could afford back home.
When you start where you were, what were some of the things you thought of doing and did do to introduce yourself into the American professional opportunities and jobs?
Well, you see, the natural thing for me would have been to continue as a professional, right? Because I have spent time in America. I have been a postdoctoral fellow at University of Massachusetts. I knew practically everyone who was dealing. In anthropology, you kind of specialize, first of all, with the areas you work with, because it involves learning local languages and that kind of thing. And I concentrated on urban cultures in the Balkans because I wanted to see that transition of how does a backward Christian but part of Ottoman Empire rural culture become an urban culture that could enter the processes of democracy and industrialization and urbanization in a period of 50 years. And that's what I really found fascinating, and how all this is reflected in people's everyday lives. And so I knew everybody in America who dealt with either urban studies or urbanization or the transition of culture under demanding circumstances. And also, what else did I do? And who are from those areas and who American anthropologists who speak the language. And then, after I had recovered for maybe several months, I started going to symposia and to meetings. And as I said, they were from the area, and I thought, oh my God, what a relief it will be. I will have colleagues to talk about everything that was wrong there, to analyze openly, and to dismantle the myth of how important it is to be of particular ethnicity, and that you're a kind of, a special kind of person if you're this or that. And I went to the very first meeting, and my God, I was terribly disappointed, because what we have managed, what the Balkans have managed to do, Balkanization is a dangerous concept, Junia.
Okay.
We have to many, not to all, but to many, it has transferred into American anthropologists as well. And American anthropologists were taking sides of the people they were studying and representing. And at that moment I said, I failed twice in my profession. First of all, I considered myself a big failure because I was not able to see that there would be a tremendous breakup of the country, and that it would be in a very bloody and very uncivilized way. I was hoping that there would be, that the other side, that the side that goes by reason and creativity instead of destructiveness, would be more powerful, would prevail. It wasn't the case. So I considered myself that I was not ready enough or detached enough to observe objectively, and not through my wishful thinking, that things would go either way. And then the second disappointment was, I'm not going to get involved with tribal wars in America. I just left them. I want to study them. I want to see the reasons for that. I want to understand them. I want to write about them so that people who find themselves in similar situations can go to those analysis and know how to do. I'm not sure that we can prevent anything, but at least we can give the power of knowledge so that people can make right decisions of what to do with their lives.
Early political correctness.
So you know that was it. And I said, I am not going to be. I think I have to rethink my ability to be an anthropologist before I can go back.
Mm-hmm.
And that has happened not so long ago. I started studying and doing my research again, maybe 10 years ago. So you lose a little, but you know, every time you make a break, you take a distance, you look at things from either bird's eye or all sides, you come back better equipped to take off where you left off.
You know, it's in a sense, it's like being born again into a place without history. You know, I moved from New York. I could have come from Belgrade, you know, without the difficulties and the fights. But I mean, your whole history is wiped out. It's of no interest to anybody. It's not that it's personal to you.
You cannot. You probably would be very much surprised how I understand deeply what you have just said, because that's so very true. I did experience myself a cultural shock coming to the Midwest because I lived on East Coast and West Coast. And, you know, New England and California, and coming to Midwest, it was really a different America. The other two, of course, differed as well, but at a different level.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely understand, and I can totally appreciate. But thanks to that, Mrs. Doan, you have done so many good things, bringing new qualities to Midland. No, I'm really serious. Matrix Midland.
Right. But you know, that's the gift people bring, that any individual can bring. You know, they bring
If
who
they
they
have it in
are,
them.
or their vision, or their drive, or their passion, or their, perseverance, whatever it is. And that's what makes America very interesting.
Definitely.
Because of the people who believe the individual can have an effect, you know, with the cooperation.
And it's amazing how once you believe that, things can really happen, isn't that
Oh,
so?
yes. I always say that. What distinguishes Midland more than any other, or when I moved here anyway, was that no one said the government should, the government could. Everybody said, what's the issue? Who's the idea? If it's worthwhile, we'll get the money, we'll get the people, we'll make it happen. And that sense of confidence is an American quality.
Absolutely. Well, Midland is a
nice.
very, very special place. And you know,
But what happened after you gave up that second time? Did you just...
then I started looking for things, and you know, looking around and seeing if I wasn't really too keen on teaching again.
Yes.
And I certainly didn't want to be a full-time teacher, because I didn't want to get involved with the administrative part or the politics of colleges, you know, because I just wanted to keep myself as
peaceful,
detached from all those things as possible while I was rebuilding my strength. So I was looking for, you know, part-time positions, and there was a lack of confidence. I'm a very confident woman now. I was a very confident woman before, but believe me, there was a couple of years where I really was not at all. And I said, okay, I have had so many different aspects in my curriculum. In European schools are that way, you know, you go into very widely, it's the breadth and width and depth and everything all at the same time. I had some design instructions, so let me see what can be a possibility in Midland. And all of a sudden I see an ad that says upholstery store looking for a store manager or something like that. Upholstery, design, creativity, fabrics, let me go and see. And I got the job. I was supposed to do the manual work as well, but I was so terrible at it that they did not pressure that point at all. But I did work with clients, with customers, and I enjoyed that tremendously. And then the networking connections come into play, and the owner of the upholstery store, she had her sister help from time to time. And that sister worked at the Northwood Gallery. Need I say any more? That's Midland.
Did you have
Connections.
to change as a mother because you changed cultures? Did your daughter do pushback on you and say that's not the American way?
Not really. Remember, I'm a cultural anthropologist. I was ahead of her.
That's really funny. Outthought her, huh? Well, thank you, Mia. So, we have learned really a great deal from Mia, and in a sense, it's a story, it's a sad story, but with a happy ending, and that is you can do everything right. You can build your life. You can build your career. You can build your family life, and then events outside you destabilize it, and you ultimately have to make a very courageous decision, and that is basically to leave. And when you do leave, with all the arrangements and the this and the that and the loss of family and finance and language, even if you know a language, it's different because the cultures are different, as she says she's a cultural anthropologist and knows. But still, it can smack you in ways. But the moral of this, the wonderfulness of that, is she took the blow. She suffered through grief, she suffered through depression, and then she took the first step. And the first step wasn't so great. It was to reestablish her connection with her field. So she stepped back from that, and she started to explore other areas, which is full of leadership. In that is leadership. You have say over your life. And from that, she has built a wonderful career at Northwood, and satisfying in totally different ways. And that's what I'm saying to you. You can find a lot of satisfaction in a lot of different ways. So thank you so very much, Mia, and thank you for tuning in. And I hope that you will do what I always ask you to do, and that is please go out and do something kind for someone you know and someone you don't know today and later on this week, actually every day. It's a good practice. And I'll see you next time. And thank you so very much for tuning in. Have a blessed week.
To contact Junia, send her an email at info@juniadone.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadone.com. Thanks for joining us. See you next time for Uncommon Sense with Junia Doan.
Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.